The morning began like any other, quiet enough for the sound of the heating system to fill the office. I opened my inbox expecting routine updates and familiar requests. Buried among the usual summaries sat the monthly payroll report. I clicked it without intention, prepared to skim it as I had done for years. The figures appeared in their neat rows, steady and predictable, until one amount unsettled my focus. It was subtle, almost insignificant at first glance, yet it carried a weight that disturbed the rhythm of the page. I reviewed the surrounding entries, searching for a reason that might justify the difference. Nothing explained it. The number felt out of place, almost foreign. I leaned back, allowing memory to guide me. I remembered drafting the original compensation structure with a group of colleagues who believed in clarity and balance. That recollection pushed me to retrieve the initial documents from the archive. When I placed the old contract beside the current report, the unease deepened. The payment listed had no connection to the approved terms. It repeated itself in earlier summaries as well, appearing with quiet regularity. I moved from one year to the next, each page confirming the presence of a pattern that had slipped through unnoticed. The office remained calm as I continued comparing each document, but my understanding shifted. I realized the irregular line was not an isolated mistake. It was a sign of something constructed carefully over time, concealed by its own consistency. I was not angry. I was curious. That curiosity changed everything. After identifying the irregular payment, I resisted the familiar impulse to react quickly. Years inside large organizations teach a different instinct. You learn that restraint often reveals more than confrontation. I closed the files and allowed myself a moment to consider the broader picture. Long careers shape a certain discipline. You understand when to pause, when to observe, and when to let a situation reveal its true form without interference. I returned to the foundation of our compensation model. Payroll followed a structured progression based on tenure, performance, and budget approval. Bonuses were authorized only after documented evaluations and committee review. Executive adjustments required strict oversight and recorded justification. These standards had been designed to eliminate improvisation. The irregular figure I discovered did not belong to any of these categories. To understand how it emerged, I revisited the guiding principles that had shaped our earlier decisions. The framework was meant to protect fairness, yet someone had maneuvered around it with quiet confidence. The payments were subtle enough to appear harmless while remaining consistent enough to create advantage. The more I studied the system, the more visible the breach became. There was no urgency in my actions, only steady examination. Experience teaches that a rushed accusation creates confusion, while a complete understanding creates certainty. I let the information settle, piece by piece, until the picture held no ambiguity. I realized the situation required more than exposure. It required timing and a path that allowed the truth to stand on its own. Wisdom grows from patience, and patience often leads to stronger outcomes than anger ever could. Scams survive on impatience. I had time. I began the review in silence, choosing the late mornings when most people were absorbed in their own tasks and the building felt almost suspended in time. I returned to the archives and pulled out the older payroll summaries, arranging them on my desk in the order they had been issued. The papers carried the faint smell of age, the kind that appears only in documents that have been handled without real attention. I studied the entries with a calm that came from many years of reading financial patterns. The irregular amount appeared again, then again, tucked inside months that had never raised any suspicion. I printed comparison sheets and placed them beside the original reports. Slowly the pages formed a timeline. Nothing dramatic occurred. No sudden revelation. Only a steady accumulation of proof that grew heavier each time I matched one year against another. I expanded the review by opening the old compensation framework that had guided the company long before the current leadership took over. The language reminded me of the principles we once protected with care. Those principles had been quietly abandoned. As I continued reading, the gap between intention and practice became undeniable. I avoided speaking a name or forming premature conclusions. I allowed the documents to speak for themselves. The numbers settled into a structure that required no explanation, a structure built through repetition and concealed beneath routine operations. By the end of the week, the evidence no longer felt like information. It felt like a statement waiting for the right audience. Patterns do not argue. They wait. Once the full picture became clear, I understood that approaching human resources would achieve nothing useful. Years inside the organization had shown me how quickly formal complaints are redirected to protect the image of the system rather than the integrity of the facts. I had seen concerns diluted by process, reshaped into softer versions of themselves, and filed away without consequence. I refused to let the truth follow that path. I considered where influence truly lived within the company. Real authority rested with those responsible for financial risk and operational compliance. These were the people who understood that numbers carry more weight than explanations. If the information reached them in its complete form, they would not be able to ignore what the documents revealed. Instead of filing a report, I organized the evidence into a single folder. I kept it close but out of sight. I waited for the moment when presenting it would create clarity rather than conflict. My aim was not to provoke an argument, but to ensure that the right individuals confronted the truth on their own terms. Experience had taught me that outcomes are stronger when emotion is removed from the process. During this time, I continued my work without drawing attention. No change in my routine signaled what I had discovered. The situation matured quietly until the weight of the information became impossible for leadership to overlook. I was not looking for justice. I was positioning truth. The morning of the review began with an unusual stillness. Senior staff walked through the corridors with a focus that suggested a confidential discussion awaited them. I watched the compensation committee gather in the conference room with folders clasped tightly in their hands. The external auditor arrived shortly after, carrying a laptop that never appeared unless something serious required verification. The board finance chair entered last, pausing at the door as if preparing for a conversation that would not end comfortably. I remained at my desk and continued my work. I had no reason to be inside that room. The documents I had organized had already been forwarded through the proper channel, and I knew that once they reached the committee, their impact would speak louder than any explanation I could offer. While the meeting unfolded behind closed doors, I pictured the reports projected onto the screen, the repeated numbers forming the same pattern I had uncovered in silence. Inside the room, the atmosphere shifted from routine review to quiet concern. Each page stripped away any possibility of misunderstanding. The timeline revealed a progression that could not be explained by oversight. The auditor confirmed the consistency of the irregular payments, and the finance chair recognized the scale of the breach. No arguments erupted. No raised voices challenged the findings. The truth sat plainly on the table, undeniable in its structure. By the time the door opened again, the direction of the situation had changed completely. When facts walk in alone, they do not need witnesses. The decision reached the executive floor with remarkable speed. Once the committee acknowledged the irregular payments, a sequence of actions began that required no further discussion. The finance chair sent an instruction to halt all related compensation activity while the system was reviewed. The auditor followed with a formal notice requesting immediate control of the digital records. Each step unfolded with a precision that left no space for delay. Information security received the alert within minutes. Access connected to the individual under investigation was suspended without hesitation. Documents that had once opened freely now displayed restricted messages. Attempts to log into internal systems failed one after another. Those who witnessed the moment described a growing realization on his face as the tools he relied upon disappeared from his reach. Payroll received orders to freeze upcoming transfers connected to his department. Compliance began documenting the steps of the investigation to ensure that every action aligned with regulation. The process moved forward with the calm discipline of a system reclaiming control. There was no noise in the hallway, no visible confrontation, only a shift in atmosphere as employees sensed the change. Security approached him with quiet professionalism, requesting that he step aside while the matter was reviewed. He complied without resistance. His authority had dissolved before he left his chair. I remained at my workstation, completing assignments as if it were any other day. The outcome did not require my presence. It unfolded through the structure he had attempted to manipulate. Power does not explode. It collapses. What followed his departure unfolded quietly, almost without movement. The leadership announced an internal review that reached every department connected to financial operations. Teams began examining older decisions with a seriousness that had been absent for years. Reports were pulled from storage, and committees held long sessions that continued late into the evening. The more they studied, the more they realized how deeply the irregularities had shaped previous outcomes. The discovery unsettled many who had trusted the process without question. Within a week, 2 senior managers resigned. Their statements did not mention the investigation, yet the timing left little doubt. No farewell gatherings were held. They simply cleared their offices and left the building. Policy meetings soon followed. Human resources, finance, and compliance worked together to rebuild every procedure related to payroll oversight. New safeguards were introduced to prevent the same vulnerability from returning. The company adjusted its structure with the quiet determination of an organization correcting its course. During this period, several colleagues approached me with questions, hoping to understand how everything had unfolded. I offered no explanations. I attended my meetings, completed my tasks, and allowed the system to correct itself without my involvement. Attention held no value for me. What mattered was the restoration of the integrity we once protected. By the end of the month, the company moved forward with a renewed awareness of the importance of transparency. The absence of the person who caused the damage no longer felt disruptive. It felt necessary. I did not destroy anything. I removed what should not have stood. To everyone who has spent years inside demanding environments, you already understand that real influence does not come from raising your voice. It comes from the discipline of observing carefully, choosing your moments, and trusting the knowledge gained through time. Experience teaches that silence can be a form of strength when guided by intention. You do not need to defend your worth to people who measure value through noise. Your history speaks on your behalf. There comes a point in every long career when you recognize that systems remember more than individuals. Documents carry evidence. Procedures hold truth. When you place information where it belongs, the outcome unfolds without your presence. This is not avoidance. It is wisdom gathered through decades of professional life. You learn that guiding the truth is more effective than confronting those who rely on confusion. Many seasoned professionals worry that age places them at a disadvantage. In reality, your patience is your advantage. You have seen trends come and go. You have watched impulsive decisions collapse under their own weight. You understand when to advance and when to allow circumstances to reveal themselves. This understanding creates a quiet authority that cannot be imitated. So if you find yourself underestimated, do not rush to prove anything. Continue doing your work with clarity. Allow structure to speak in the moments that matter. The outcome will always reflect the strength of your preparation rather than the volume of your reaction. People who manipulate systems forget one truth. Time remembers who built them.